Thank you, Simone. And I have to say, I've been so looking forward to seeing all of you. Now that I'm here, I can't see a thing. But maybe that's good. Anyway, welcome, and I'm looking forward to the next 3 days sharing and thinking together. I also, just because I don't know, I wanted to check, who here is French? Okay, keep your hands up for 1 sec. And who is from the rest of Europe? Okay, well, you guys have to put your hands down just so you can see. Beyond Nepal, which I know, who's from outside of Europe? That could be North America, South America, Central America, Asia. Okay. All right, thanks. And just out of curiosity again, and to get a sense, how many of you guys consider yourselves to be actively engaged in making mischief, instigating, that sort of thing with respect to the collaborative economy? Okay, and the rest of you just were looking for a place to hang out? Just checking. Okay, so I'm going to, I've had the privilege really over the last 7 years of riding the wave, observing what's happening, going to various parts of the world, bothering others, and essentially as an investor and advisor to startups, but also I've had the chance to do a lot of thinking and working with cities, governments, and also large corporations. So I've had a really interesting perspective, and I want to share some of that with you, what I've learned, also kind of what's been capturing my attention most recently. I'm calling the conversation Create Value, Capture Resilience, because I think that one of the things that's happening with collaborative economy is that we're creating value, but we don't know how to measure it, and that we're not exactly sure what it looks like. And as a result, we're paying a lot of attention to metrics that were very relevant for perhaps a different economy. We're missing a lexicon, and we're missing the ability to sort of be able to articulate what it is that we're actually bringing forward, that I think is really fundamental. And secondly, that I believe that one of the main attributes that we'll be kind of selecting for in terms of communities and brands is the notion of resiliency. That resilient communities are communities that thrive in happy times and in times of emergencies. And the same with brands. And so one of the things that happens when we start to actually learn how to work together and figure out, oh God, we have to actually collaborate, how are we going to do that? We end up being connected in ways that have real value. And that value, I think, is happening all around us, but we're not actually identifying it. At the moment, it's invisible. One of the other things is that as we're moving from one kind of whole paradigm to another, we went from understanding expectations and understanding what we thought about people and what we thought we should plan to imagine when we arrive to a hotel or when we go to work. Now that's very different. And so I call this sort of an emerging social operating system. And I think we're in the early days of creating and refining a new kind of social operating system. A lot of what's happening is built on the culture of generosity, and I think this comes in kind of two flavors. One, the collection of characters with the weird eyewear. Some of them may be recognizable to you. That's the kind of community, I would say, that selectively, deliberately chooses generosity. They're being generous with their time and their talents for the sake of co-creating. In fact, in creating a space like this for us to join together. The other kind of generosity, use Velib as an example, Paris has several, but they're what I refer to as open-air experiments. And these open-air experiments are things that are happening all around us in cities, apps that we run on our phone, conversations we have with each other here. They're things that are available in the world that allow us to actually learn from each other and move things along more rapidly. So bike sharing, thanks to Velib in 2005 and 2007, has allowed bike sharing to be in more than 500 cities around the world. and the fastest growing form of personal transport. So those sorts of things accelerate the movement and also take a lot of the friction and cost out of making these things scale. Also, cities, obviously, more of us as of this morning, 7.14 billion people on the planet. Most of us are living in and will be moving to cities. Cities obviously are the platform in which so much is happening. And a lot of this I've been referring to as almost like a birth of urban entrepreneurship. We're seeing talent and investment move into basically solving problems of cities, or our challenges in cities: transport, food, as we just heard, education, and so on. One of the main tenets of the MESH, or the collaborative economy, is this, that unused value equals waste. That is, a lot of the experiments that we've seen to date have been based on this, which is the notion that we have a lot, we own a lot, and when we're not using something that we consider to be valuable in that instant, because suddenly we can make the invisible visible, if we can make those unused assets in time visible, suddenly that creates this whole new kind of marketplace. And so a lot of what's sort of transpired over the last 5 and 6 years has been that idea of converting this unused value to waste in the excess capacity. There's another form of waste as well, that is the stuff that we toss out, that we consider garbage and throw away. And that kind of waste, actually, we're starting to also pay attention to with marketplaces like Yerdle, that actually upcycles, takes a waste stream and redirects it into a secondary marketplace, or the circular economy that takes the waste stream and redirects it into the supply stream for creating new products. I think we're in the very early days of this still, and there's enormous value that we have yet to capture. And then my brief history of the last 5 or 6 years is that we've had a lot of experiments, we've learned a lot, talked a lot. There's some very big distribution. I'm probably missing several countries because there are many informal experiments and communities and programs that are taking place. For example, Mondial that I didn't even know until we got lost together this morning, and then I heard his talk, that was going on. So there may be many more countries, in fact, that are participating, but this is not something that's exclusive to Paris or London or San Francisco, thankfully. Borrowed from some graffiti in Copenhagen, I'm happy to say that we've made a lot of mistakes, and I think that these are one of the great treasures. I would love to challenge us by sharing more of the mistakes, of the mistakes that we've had, and allowing us to kind of stand on each other's shoulders so that all of us don't repeat the same things. To date, the really big plays are what has kind of captivated the press around the world. Many of them have been venture funded. They, over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been about $5 billion put into collaborative economy companies. Of that, about $2 billion have gone to 5 companies. And a lot of those companies, those 5 companies, are getting a lot of the press. But they also are doing a lot of the building of the platform, the fighting with the cities, the kind of building the expectations and going back to the social, the new kind of social operating system that's being built. And so they're providing incredible value for the overall phenomenon, but at the same time they're also capturing the bulk of attention. There's an aspect, though, that I want to raise, which is with respect to creating value. One of the things that I'm hoping that we can talk about in the next 3 days, is the relationship between value created and value captured. Do we capture that value as an individual, as a brand, as a community, for the entire movement? How does that work? And should it be that if a venture-funded company in the old model, when they have an exit, when they go public, or they sell the company, the benefit goes to, most of the benefit goes to the founding team, the owners, and the investors. And so, but in the collaborative economy, it seems to me, and I'm sure many of you, that there's a different kind of opportunity for how we share and define value. Now, one of the big companies, Quirky, which is a crowd-funded crowdsourced inventions platform. It's a VC-funded service, and Quirky basically has really successful products. They make consumer products using an international community of designers, marketers, developers. And there's a distribution typically in their model of 10% of the revenues go to the participating community who actually helped to invent that product. Well, in this case, several years ago, General Electric, GE, one of the top 5 companies in the world according to market capitalization, invested in Quirky. And last year, the founder of Quirky went to GE, said, hey, we're all going to be directed towards B2B. We actually decided we don't really want to do stuff for consumers. So the cocky founder of Quirky went to the powers that be to GE, and he said, you know, you guys have like billions and billions of dollars of intellectual property, patents, that you are using for aviation and medical equipment, and that's what you want to be doing, your B2B business. But you know, a lot of that technology could be really interesting for doing all sorts of things that you said you're not going to do. So if we want to get the most value out of our partnership and your old investment, why don't you give me your patents, and I'll put them on my crowdsourced platform. And there must have been wine or something involved in the conversation because they said yes. So GE's patents went on Quirky, and a guy called Dr. Garthen Leslie, who is actually a 68-year-old retired man who worked at the Department of Energy in the United States for years, but it really bothered him that 20% of the energy that's used in New York City in the summer is used to power these incredibly ugly and really terribly inefficient window air conditioners. And so he realized that he could use some of the GE patent to apply to window air conditioners, and very rapidly that allowed them to get to market faster, costing less money, offering a product that's very sophisticated for not so much money to the consumer. It's actually shipping this week. In terms of value capture, GE, of course, and Quirky are making money and getting good brand hits from it. But Dr. Leslie is also, I'm told by the company, going to receive a check for $700,000 in the next couple of weeks. So they're playing with the models. We're starting to see how do you share value. And I, again, want to offer that up as a question. I've learned and watched that we're getting very good at copying what works, that we're good imitators, and that's a terrific thing, and that helps us also see that we're maturing as a collection of characters around the world. We're getting also very happy about, and beyond this room, people who are actively working in the collaborative economy, we're seeing people who are telling us, who are experiencing different marketplaces, how relieved and how happy they are to be connected to other people. That they understand the platform is connecting them, but they are very delighted to actually be feeling much more connected to humans. So that's a good thing. And then, of course, there have been a few red flags. There's between food and transportation and finance and energy and housing. Certainly around the world in different cities, the city governments have come down, or different regulators, on some of the challenges where we're coming up and rubbing up against old models that need to, frankly, be refreshed. I think that some cities are stepping into it very rapidly and very openly, Paris being one of them. Congratulations. Also Amsterdam, Porto Alegre, Bogota, Colombia, Portland, Oregon, probably missing one or two, Copenhagen, but they're few, they're a handful. And I'm very confident that in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see pretty much all the cities coming forward to make deals, essentially, for us mutually to come to the table and figure out how we're going to do this together. So from my view, the genie is out. There's no way that we're going back, we're only going forward. And to go forward, we should first see where we are. Beyond Paris, this is a guy and a group called the Adizes Institute. For years, they've actually been identifying how industries, companies, and economies have a life cycle. So they have a birth and a death. You can, in this scenario, unlike us, you can actually avoid death by getting to something like aristocracy and saying, holy crap, our model's not working, and scooting around with a lab or new models or partnerships or acquisitions to create more goodness and more young opportunities. As I see it, the phase one of the collaborative economy and the more successful companies are somewhere between go-go and adolescence. And the reason is because these are the indicators of adolescence. This is, you start to see marketplace dynamics turn up. Well, some of these marketplaces that are having multiple $1 billion in valuation and are scaling internationally, they do. Global reach, some serious funding, they're able to recruit really terrific people who have expertise in different areas and therefore move quite quickly. They're getting validation from big partnerships. And we're seeing secondary offerings, which means that the marketplace that they're created is so large that and appears to be so inevitable that it's going to be successful, that it starts to actually create secondary businesses that address that market. So for example, there's companies emerging who are renting cars to drivers who want to drive ride-sharing services but don't themselves have a car. Or people who want to provide concierge services for Knock or Airbnb or One Fine Stay, those sorts of things. These are, PayPal to eBay. We're seeing that sort of thing take shape, and that's a real validation. Of course, not everyone's there. Many ideas are just now getting started. And some of our near-term challenges, well, Dr. Jonas Salk, he created the polio vaccine. He decided that he was going to open source it and basically save a lot of people's lives rather than take the patents and build a pharmaceutical company. He gave up what people estimate to be $7 billion in value, but created a different kind of value. So as we think about in the next couple of days the relationship between value creation and value capture, I would suggest that we address that. Resilience, again, for me, is a core value that we're building, but we don't notice, but we are. We're becoming more resilient as a community. One of the things about resilience is diversity. I think Manjil's talk, as well as the gentleman speaking about people for food, is diversity, local, complexity. Those are good things because they allow you to survive in wonky and weird times. So creating things that don't need fancy smartphones and starting to reach other geographies, important ideas. But not only that, looking towards other models that aren't VC funded, that are really bootstrapped, where we have worker cooperatives starting to show up in a way where they're also getting the kind of attention and support. I'm looking at how we can start to share things, and some of these are an artifact of having venture-funded companies, but how we can share things like reputation systems, core platforms, that we build the same platform to share goods as we do to share cars, as durable goods, consumable goods. A lot of these things, we're all building the same basic technology and tools, in many cases teams, but we're not sharing them for reasons that are kind of an artifact from a previous era, in my opinion. So there's a lot of opportunity here that we should explore. I'm inviting us to step up together over the next 3 days. I'm delighted to have whatever conversations you want to have, and thank you for inviting me. This is a gentleman who is a children's book author, so I'm just a fan of his. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. So I will take the chance, since we have you on stage, to ask you one very straight and very straightforward question. So you actually told us that we need new models, especially when it comes to capturing value. And as you can see from the presentation, we have still lots of open issues. Lots of question marks. And you have the chance to talk with a lot of stakeholders, with big companies, government, cities. So my question is, do you think that this transition will happen smoothly, or we are going through some sort of crisis, clashes between powers and between positions? Does it make sense?
Yes. Well, I thought you were going to ask me an easy question. I think that we're moving the thing forward, and I believe that it's inevitable that it will happen. I think that what happens and I had the personal experience already in several companies and industries, when people feel that they're close to retirement, for example, the company has a lot of power, and they want to continue on the way that they were because, geez, I mean, are you kidding me? I'm not going to rethink my whole career. I have like another half hour here. You must be joking. So there's a lot of that in which it makes it quite difficult when, taxi commissions or, hotel unions or different organizations decide that this is something that they won't tolerate. I think increasingly the cities are realizing that this is about embracing innovation, not protecting incumbents. And so the challenge there is a financial one, which is how do we make that transition in a way that doesn't basically take the bottom out of the public markets and make the economy go crazy. And I think that that's a conversation that people are having behind closed doors and not in forums like this. The other thing is that when we have natural disasters, that also drives, so about 40 years ago there were 9 natural disasters in the year. About 3 years ago there were 953. The predictions are that they're going to continue to happen. That's why I think that one of the core aspects of what we're bringing, resilience, and resilient communities and brands and that competence is fundamental because, in fact, communities that have known each other and worked well together, with or without smart infrastructure in the city, have done far better than communities with smart infrastructure and no relationship. So I think that crisis actually, unfortunately, helps and speeds it up, but I think that this is an inevitable thing.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for your question.
Thanks very much.
Thanks to you.